At the party, someone started up a round of never have I ever. One of the guys had had too much to drink and he grinned as he said it. I've secretly gone on a trip alone with my girlfriend's best friend. Behind her back. Everyone at the table cursed him for being scum. And they all folded down a finger. Everyone except my boyfriend, Desmond Gilbert. Across the table, Beverly Matthews' eyes went red. Ramona Dickinson. Don't get the wrong idea. I just gone through a breakup back then. He was only keeping me company. The next turn came around to Desmond. As if to prove he had nothing to hide. He reached over and pulled Beverly's hand toward him. I've bought a ring for my girlfriend's best friend. On Beverly's pinky sat a plain band. Last month out shopping, I tried that exact ring on. Desmond had slipped it off my finger and handed it back to the clerk. Ring isn't the kind of thing you give someone lightly. And now it was on my best friend's hand. Beverly hurried to pull her hand back. Desmond, stop. But he didn't let go. It's just a birthday present. Don't read into it. I looked at their joined hands, then slowly looked down at my own 5 fingers. And somewhere along the way, only one of them was still standing. This round of the game, this relationship, it seemed like the one losing was me. Either way, someone in the private room let out a couple of awkward laughs. As you gave a ring as a birthday present. Beverly's eyes reddened further. And she scrambled to pull her hand back again. Ramona, don't overthink it. It's just a plain birthday present. I swear. Desmond frowned, and instead of letting go, he only gripped Beverly's hand tighter. You don't need to explain anything to her. That's just how Ramona is. She blows everything up into a federal case. He turned to me, an edge of impatience in his voice. The reason I didn't buy you one back then is that I knew a ring wasn't what you wanted. What you wanted was a promise. Beverly's different. She's just happy to get a gift. She doesn't back me into a corner over it. Beverly gave his sleeve a light tug. Desmond, stop it. But he only let out a low laugh. What's the big deal? Why can't I say it? Always nagging about marriage. It's so much pressure. I looked at the ring on Beverly's pinky. And suddenly I remembered her birthday. It was the 17th, the same day Desmond had promised to come meet my parents. That day my parents had taken a 3-hour train to see him. We waited from noon until dusk. All we got in the end was one message from Desmond. Something came up at work. Let's do it another time. I looked at Desmond. So that day when you stood us up and skipped meeting my parents, you were off celebrating her birthday. Beverly ducked her head and started working the ring off. I honestly didn't know. That day was when you two were meeting the parents. Ramona, if it bothers you, I'll give it back to you. Desmond's face darkened and he grabbed Beverly's hand. It was a gift for you. Keep it. There's nothing to give back. He turned to me with a look of pure disappointment. Ramona, I know you're in a hurry to get married, but meeting the parents doesn't have to be that one day. You didn't have time to celebrate Beverly's birthday. So, I did it for you and you're still not happy. I looked down at my own hand. 5 fingers, and only the last one was still up. Slowly, I curled it back into my palm. 5 fingers all folded down. No need to give it back. I don't want it. Desmond frowned. Ramona, what's that supposed to mean? I picked up my bag and stood. Nothing. I just don't want it anymore. I'd barely reached the elevator when I heard footsteps behind me. Desmond had chased me out. He grabbed my wrist. Go back inside and apologize to Beverly. Did you really have to embarrass her like that in front of everyone? You made it look like she was the one who came between us. What are people supposed to think? His grip on my wrist hurt. You chased me out here to make me apologize? To her, his face stiffened, then slid straight back into irritation. Is it really that big a deal? You just went looking for a fight, trying to force some kind of reaction out of me. I never said I wouldn't marry you. Can you please stop pressuring me? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Pressuring him. So 8 years of waiting came down to that one word. I stayed with him from 23 to 31. One by one, our friends got married, had kids, and Desmond always said, let's wait a little longer. Now's not the right time. I'm under a lot of pressure. So I waited and waited until all that was left was that word. Pressuring him. Seeing that I said nothing, his tone softened a little. Ramona, that's not what I meant. I just don't think we need to make this ugly. Go back inside. Okay. Everyone's still in there? I pulled my hand free and said quietly, I'm tired. I'm going home. I stepped into the elevator and didn't look at him again. Cab was pulling away from the club when my mother called. Mom, there was a beat of silence on the other end. Ramona, are you really not going to think about coming home? That position at the city hospital. If you don't confirm by tomorrow morning, it goes to someone else. I gripped the phone and didn't answer as if afraid of pushing me. She quickly added, I'm not rushing you. I just want to ask this Desmond of yours. What does he actually want? If he really wanted to marry you, he wouldn't have dragged it out this long. All these years, how many times have your dad and I asked to meet him? Not once. He never came. The tears came all at once. On the other end, my mother's voice broke, too. Ramona, it's okay if you don't get married. You're dad, and I can take care of you. Don't do this to yourself over a man who won't give you an answer. Outside the window, the street lights slid past one by one, and it hit me that these 8 years had been one long dream. It was finally time to wake up. I wiped my eyes and said softly, "Mom, hold that position for me. I'm coming home tomorrow to sign." My father's voice came through the phone. "Ramona's coming home." My mother laughed through her tears. "Yes," she says. "She's coming home." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I'm coming home." After I finished the paperwork to resign from the hospital and went back to the apartment Desmond and I had rented for 5 years, I started packing. We'd taken this place together the year we graduated. Back then, he held my hand and said that once we saved up enough for a down payment, we'd buy a home that was truly ours. The living room would have the white couch I loved. The balcony would grow mint and cherry tomatoes. The study would have one whole wall of photos. He said that when we were old, we'd flip through them one by one and show our kids. While clearing the bookshelf, I came across a thick craft paper photo album. Desmond had made it for me by hand the year we graduated from college. On the title page, he'd written and inked to Ramona, "Our youth is only just beginning." I lowered my eyes and turned to the photos. Graduation trip, group dinners, New Year's fireworks, birthday get-togethers. I turned through them one page at a time, and it hit me that every single photo Desmond had glued in with his own hands had Beverly in it. And tucked into the last page was a solo shot of Beverly. She stood at the edge of the field, the wind lifting her white dress, glancing back at the camera with a smile. On the back, in Desmond's handwriting, June 18th, 2018, Beverly's graduation. "She looks beautiful today." I closed the album and put it back. I wasn't going to take this one with me, because what it preserved had never been my story. I drew my hand back and went on sorting the rest. That was when I heard the lock turn at the front door. Desmond came over and pressed his hand down over mine. As I was folding clothes, "That's enough. Stop packing. You're really running away from home." If Beverly hadn't kept talking me into it, I honestly wouldn't have wanted to come back tonight. "Beverly's been thinking about you this whole time. How can you be so selfish?" I brushed his hand off, ignored him, and turned to get the clothes out of the closet. Desmond held out a paper bag. Inside, "Haven't you always wanted to get married? There are wedding plans in here. I had someone draft a few versions. After the new year, we'll set a date." Hand holding my clothes stopped dead in midair. I'd imagined the scene of him proposing to me countless times. Sure, I'd be moved to tears. But now, when he'd finally said it out loud, I opened the bag. Inside were venue brochures, a bridal gown catalog, and a few photos of reception sites. On the booking form, the line for the bride's name was blank. Desmond stepped closer and pulled me into his arms. "Stop holding it against Beverly. She cried for a long time today, too. And she kept telling me, 'We can't keep stringing you along. I'm even giving you a wedding. You should be a little more reasonable.'" I looked down at the planning sheets. Before I could say anything, another confirmation slip slid out of the bag. It was a booking for the Iceland Aurora Resort, a double suite, 30 nights on the line for travelers. It read, "Desmond Gilbert and Beverly Matthews." I knew that resort 3 years ago. I'd stayed up night after night putting together honeymoon plans. And it was the first one I'd bookmarked. Desmond reached out and slid the booking slip away. "Since we're having a wedding now, there's so much to prepare. So, let's skip the honeymoon trip. Beverly's been in a bad place lately anyway, so I'm planning to take her to Iceland. We'll have plenty of chances to get away later. Missing this one is no big deal." At that point, as if he thought he'd already given up enough, he added, "She grew up in a single-parent home, and she's never even been out of the state." Ramona, I know you can understand that. The moment I heard those words, something seized my heart hard. I suddenly remembered last winter, the 3 of us eating a late-night meal at a curbside spot. Heavy snow had come down that day, and Beverly, a little drunk, went right around the eyes talking about her childhood. She said that in winter, her family couldn't even afford coal, that all she could do is tuck her hands into her worn-out coat, her fingers covered in chilblains, and that back then her biggest dream was to watch the snow come down from inside a heated room. That day, Desmond, who always kept his feelings in check, listened and listened until his own eyes went red. I looked at Desmond's face, and the fire that had turned in my chest for 8 years went out completely. I slid my hand out of his finger by finger. "Okay." Desmond blinked, then reached out to pull me in again. "That's my girl, Ramona. I always knew you were the understanding one." I stepped back out of his reach. Desmond went to shower. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the dashcam app, and got ready to unlink the device. Tomorrow I was going home. Some things needed to be cleared out. I must have tapped something, because a cloud recording started playing on its own. And then Beverly's voice came through. "Des, Could you stop being so good to me from now on?
You found me a job.
You covered my rent. You even went with my mom to all her hospital checkups. If you keep doing this, I'm really going to get the wrong idea. Desmond's voice was low. Beverly, don't overthink it. I just know it's hard for you on your own. Beverly gave a small laugh. Are you this good to everyone who's having a hard time? The car went quiet for a few seconds. Desmond didn't answer. Beverly asked again. Then, have you ever even a little liked me? Desmond was silent for a long time. Beverly, stop asking. There's no chance for us. I can't do wrong by Ramona. Beverly said muffled. Just answer my last question. Would you regret it? Regret not meeting me sooner? Desmond didn't speak for a long while. Finally he said yes. Yes. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking down at the unlink button at the bottom of the screen. I had heard it all. Now I lowered my eyes and pressed it. Desmond came out of the shower and wrapped his arms around me from behind, the way he always did. Ramona, I've been thinking tomorrow. Let's go put down the deposit on the place at Unit in Southgate. You always loved the floor-to-ceiling windows there, didn't you? Before. A few lines like that probably would have brought tears to my eyes. 8 years I'd waited for him too long. He paused as if choosing his words. Oh, I was thinking we'd keep one of the rooms for Beverly to stay in. You know how it is with her family. It's not like she has a real home to go back to. That way you'd have company, too, and she wouldn't waste money on rent. Once she gets married, she can move out. Let's hold off on the photo wall, too. Beverly says a full wall of cabinets is more practical. She's actually worried you'd mind. I told her Ramona is the most generous person there is. I watched the moonlight leaking through the gap in the curtains, and suddenly I smiled. I lifted his arm off my waist.
Sure.
Desmond let out a breath of relief. Before long, his even breathing settled behind me. At 3 in the morning, I dragged my suitcase out the door. By the time Desmond woke, it was 9. He reached toward the space beside him and found only cold sheets. Half the closet was empty. No breakfast in the kitchen. On the shoe cabinet, only a spare key was left. That was when the panic hit him. He called me at once. Phone off. His texts all bounced back with red exclamation marks. His fingers shaking. Desmond called the head nurse of my department, his voice tight with a mixture of anger and growing panic. Is Ramona there yet? He demanded, not even bothering with a greeting. She's late for her shift, and her phone is off. Tell her to call me the second she gets in. There was a long pause on the other end. Sister Teresa, who had known me since my residency, let out a slow, heavy sigh. It was a sound of profound pity, though Desmond was too self-absorbed to recognize it. Desmond, she said, her voice dropping into a quiet, professional coldness. Ramona isn't late. She submitted her resignation yesterday morning. She cleared out her locker, turned to her badge, and signed the final discharge papers. She doesn't work here anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. What do you mean, she resigned? Desmond's voice cracked, the irritation instantly replaced by a cold, hollow dread. She didn't tell me anything about this. She's been at that hospital for 5 years. Where would she go? She went home, Desmond, Sister Teresa replied, her tone clipping. To her family, where she should have gone a long time ago. Please don't call this line again. The line went dead. Desmond stood in the middle of our empty living room, the phone pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone. For the first time in 8 years, the silence of the apartment didn't feel like peace. It felt like an evacuation. Chapter 1. The train to yesterday. The 3-hour train ride to my hometown was quiet. I sat by the window, watching the concrete skyline of the city gradually dissolve into rolling green fields and distant, mist-shrouded hills. For the last 8 years, my world had been confined to a 10-mile radius. The apartment we rented, the hospital where I pulled 36-hour shifts, and the crowded restaurants where Desmond, Beverly, and I would spend our weekends. I had shrunk myself to fit into the margins of his life, believing that if I was just patient enough, quiet enough, and understanding enough, he would finally open the door and let me all the way in. I looked down at my hands. The skin on my fingers was pale, devoid of any jewelry.
No rings, no promises.
Just 10 empty fingers. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a clean slate. When the train finally pulled into the station of my hometown, the air smelled different. It smelled of damp earth, pine needle smoke, and the faint, sweet scent of rain. It was the smell of my childhood. As I stepped onto the platform, dragging my suitcase behind me, I saw 2 figures standing near the exit. My father, his hair now almost entirely silver, was wearing his old woolen cardigan. Beside him, my mother was scanning the crowd, her eyes bright and anxious. The moment she spotted me, her face crumbled. She didn't wait for me to reach them. She ran forward, her arms open wide, and pulled me into a fierce, suffocating hug. "You're home," she whispered, her voice trembling against my shoulder. "My baby is home." My father caught up, wrapping his large, calloused hands around my shoulders, anchoring me. He didn't ask about Desmond. He didn't ask why my suitcase was so light or why my eyes were red and swollen. He simply took the handle of my luggage from my grip. "Let's go home, Ramona," he said softly. "Your mother made chicken stew. It's been simmering since noon." That evening, I sat at the wooden dining table of my childhood home. The warmth of the radiator hummed in the background, and the gentle clinking of silverware filled the room. No one pressured me to speak. They simply passed the bread, poured the tea, and looked at me with an unconditional tenderness that I hadn't realized I was starving for. Later that night, after my parents had gone to bed, I sat at the desk in my old bedroom. The room was exactly as I had left it at 23, posters of medical anatomy on the walls, a shelf full of dusty textbooks, and a small, dried flower bouquet from my college graduation. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email from the director of the city hospital in my hometown. "Dear Dr. Dickinson, we are thrilled to hear that you have decided to accept the position of senior pediatric cardiologist. Please find the attached contract. We look forward to having you join our team on Monday." With a steady hand, I printed the document, signed my name in clear, elegant cursive, and scanned it back. As the email marked sent, a profound sense of finality washed over me. The thread had been cut. I was no longer Ramona, the woman waiting in the shadows of Desmond Gilbert's life. I was Dr. Ramona Dickinson, and my life was finally my own. Chapter 2. The Rot in the Empty Space. Back in the city, the apartment on Southgate was suffocatingly quiet. Desmond sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress cold and unyielding beneath him. He had spent the last 3 days calling every mutual friend we had, only to be met with cold shoulders or outright hostility. "I don't know where she is, Des," our college friend Marcus had told him over the phone, his voice laced with disgust. "And, honestly, even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. You played a stupid game and you lost. Let her go." Desmond had slammed the phone down. He couldn't understand it. How could 8 years of devotion vanish overnight? She was just throwing a tantrum. Ramona was always the reasonable one, the one who bore his moods and his neglect with a quiet, patient smile. This was just her way of punishing him for the ring, for the stood-up dinner with her parents. She would calm down. She always did. But as he walked through the apartment, the reality of her absence began to chip away at his denial. The bathroom shelves were half empty. The small lavender-scented soap she used was gone, replaced by the sterile, clinical smell of his own body wash. In the kitchen, the jars of dried tea leaves she used to brew for him when he had late-night headaches were gone. The fridge, which was always stocked with his favorite craft beers and marinated meats, held nothing but a half-empty carton of milk and a jar of old pickles. He reached for his phone to call Beverly, but before he could dial, the doorbell rang. He rushed to the door, a sudden surge of hope rising in his chest. "It's her. She's back." He threw the door open. "Ramona."
But it wasn't me.
It was Beverly. She stood in the hallway, wearing a pale blue trench coat, her eyes wide and watery. In her hand, she held a small paper bag of pastries. "Des," she whispered, stepping into the apartment without waiting for an invite. I was so worried. I tried calling Ramona, but she blocked me. Is she still mad at me? I brought her favorite lemon tarts. I wanted to apologize again. Desmond's face fell, the brief light in his eyes extinguishing instantly. "She's not here, Bev." Beverly paused, looking around the barren living room. Her eyes lingered on the empty shoe rack, then on the kitchen counter where my set of keys sat glittering in the dim light. Did she really leave?" Beverly asked, her voice dropping into that familiar, fragile register. "Because of me? Oh God, Des, this is all my fault. If I hadn't kept that ring, if I hadn't let you buy it for me." "It's not your fault," Desmond said, though his voice lacked its usual protective warmth. He rubbed his temples, a dull ache starting to throb behind his eyes. "Ramona is she's being unreasonable. She's overreacting to pressure me into marriage. She thinks if she runs away, I'll chase her with a ring. But what about the wedding plans you showed her?" Beverly pressed, stepping closer, her fingers lightly brushing his sleeve. The ones you drafted? Didn't she see them?" Desmond stiffened. He remembered the honeymoon booking slip that had fallen out of the bag, the one for the Iceland Aurora Resort, under his and Beverly's names. He had tried to downplay it, but the look in my eyes before he went into the shower had been different. It hadn't been anger. It had been nothing. Absolute, cold vacancy. "She saw them," Desmond muttered, turning away from Beverly's touch. He walked over to the bookshelf, his eyes scanning the empty space where my medical journals used to sit. His gaze fell on the thick craft paper photo album, the one he had made for me when we graduated. He pulled it off the shelf. It felt lighter than he remembered. He flipped it open to the first page. "To Ramona, our youth is only just beginning." The ink was slightly faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably his. He turned the pages, expecting to see the familiar timeline of our 8 years together. But as his eyes drifted over the photos, a cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. Every photo had Beverly in it, even the ones of just him and me. Beverly was there, standing in the background or laughing beside us. And then he reached the final page. The sleeve that had held Beverly's solo shot, the one from her graduation in 2018, was empty. But the note on the back of the page, written in his own hand, was exposed. June 18th, 2018. Beverly's graduation. She looks beautiful today. Desmond's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the handwriting, the words mocking him in the quiet apartment. She saw it. He realized a sudden, sickening wave of nausea hitting him. She saw the album. She knows. He dropped the album onto the coffee table and lunged for his phone. He opened the dashcam app, his fingers trembling violently as he tried to log into the cloud recordings. Device unlinked. The red text flashed on his screen like a warning light. He stared at it, the blood rushing in his ears. She had heard the recording. She had heard him admit, in the quiet dark of his car, that he regretted not meeting Beverly sooner. She had heard him admit that he was only staying with her out of obligation because he couldn't do wrong by Ramona. Des. Beverly's voice broke through his panic, sounding small and distant. What's wrong? You look pale. Desmond turned to look at her. For 8 years, Beverly had been his secret sanctuary, the fragile, beautiful girl who made him feel like a hero, a protector. Ramona was strong, independent, and capable. She didn't need him the way Beverly did. He had convinced himself that his devotion to Beverly was purely platonic, a noble duty to a girl who had had a hard life. But looking at Beverly now, standing in the apartment that Ramona had built, the illusion began to shatter. Did you know? Desmond asked, his voice dangerously low. Know what? Beverly blinked, taking a step back. Did you know that Ramona's parents were coming to town that day? He asked, his eyes locking onto hers. The day of your birthday. The day I skipped meeting them. Beverly's face went pale. She swallowed hard, her hand instinctively flying to the collar of her coat. I told you I didn't know. You did, Desmond said, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow. You called me 3 times that morning, crying because your radiator was broken and you were freezing. You knew I was supposed to go to the train station. You knew because Ramona had told you the week before. Desmond, how can you say that? Beverly's eyes welled with tears, her voice cracking. I was cold. I was lonely. I didn't mean to. But you knew, Desmond repeated, his voice hollow. He looked at the pinky finger of her right hand. The plain gold band was gone, replaced by bare skin. She had taken it off, but the mark of where it had sat was still faintly visible. Leave, Beverly, he said quietly, turning his back on her. Des. Just leave. Chapter 3. The cold light of spring. The transition to my new life was smoother than I expected. The pediatric cardiology ward at the city hospital was busy, demanding, and deeply fulfilling. I spent my days surrounded by children, fragile little hearts that needed mending, and the sheer weight of my responsibility left no room for lingering ghosts. My colleagues were warm, my parents were overjoyed to have me nearby, and slowly, the hollow ache in my chest began to fill with something else. Peace. I stopped wearing makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes because I was finally sleeping through the night. I bought a small, cozy apartment 5 minutes from the hospital. It didn't have a white couch and there were no photos on the walls yet, but the balcony was lined with small pots of mint and cherry tomatoes that I watered every morning. It was mine, every square inch of it. 3 months passed in a blur of sterile scrubs, hot coffee, and quiet Sunday dinners with my parents. I had changed my phone number, deleted my old social media accounts, and severed every tie to the city. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick, from the foundation up. And then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in late November, the past caught up. I had just finished a difficult 6-hour valve replacement surgery on a 4-year-old girl. I was exhausted, my shoulders aching under my scrubs. As I walked out of the hospital's main lobby toward the parking lot, my umbrella held low against the biting wind. Ramona. The voice was raspy, thin, and entirely familiar. I stopped in my tracks. The rain beat a steady rhythm against the nylon of my umbrella. For a brief second, I thought about ignoring it, about walking straight to my car and driving away. But I realized that if I ran, I would still be letting him control my movements. Slowly, I lifted the umbrella. Desmond stood a few feet away, soaked to the bone. He wasn't wearing his usual pristine wool coat. Instead, he wore a dark, wrinkled jacket, his hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. He had lost weight. His cheekbones were sharp, and there were dark, purple shadows under his eyes that no amount of sleep could fix. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. Desmond, I said. My voice was calm, steady, and entirely devoid of the anger he probably expected. It was the voice I used to deliver diagnoses to patients, objective, professional, and detached. He took a step forward, his hands trembling as he reached toward me, then dropped them to his sides, as if remembering he no longer had the right to touch me. "You changed your number," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I went to your parents' house, but your dad told me if I ever set foot on his property again, he'd call the police. I had to wait outside the hospital for 3 days just to find you." "Why are you here, Desmond?" I asked, shielding myself from the wind. "I think I made myself very clear when I left." "No, you didn't," he said, his eyes desperate, locking onto mine. "You just ran away, Ramona. You left a key on the cabinet and disappeared. 8 years. We were together for 8 years, and you walked out over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I let out a soft, dry laugh. It was a sound of genuine amusement, not bitterness. "Is that what you're calling it?" "The ring was just a gift," he pleaded, stepping closer, his breath coming in ragged plumes in the cold air. "Beverly was going through a hard time. Her mother was sick, she had no money. I was just trying to help her. And the Iceland trip, I booked it because she'd never seen the snow from a warm room. Ramona, you know how she grew up. You always said you understood." "I did understand," I said quietly. "I understood so well that I let you spend 8 years of my life prioritizing her comfort over my existence. I understood so well that I stood at a train station with my elderly parents for 6 hours while you were off buying a ring for another woman. I was going to marry you," Desmond yelled, the rain washing down his face, masking whatever tears he might have been crying. "I brought the wedding plans to the apartment. I was ready, Ramona. After the new year, we were going to set a date." "You brought a wedding catalog with a blank space for the bride's name?" I replied, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the sound of the rain. "And in the same bag, you had a 30-day honeymoon booked with Beverly. Did you think I was stupid, Desmond? Or did you just think I was so desperate for a piece of paper that I would accept sharing my husband with another woman?" Desmond froze. The frantic energy seemed to drain from him all at once, leaving him looking small and pathetic. You saw the booking," he muttered. "I saw everything," I said. "I saw the photo album you made for me, where every single memory of my youth was shadowed by her. I saw the photo of her graduation, with your handwriting on the back. And I heard the dashcam recording, Desmond." His eyes widened, the last traces of color draining from his face. "Ramona, I didn't mean." "You told her you regretted not meeting her sooner," I said, my voice steady, though a phantom chill swept through my chest. "You told her you couldn't do wrong by me. Well, congratulations, Desmond. You don't have to worry about doing wrong by me anymore. I'm letting you go.
You can be with her now.
You can take her to Iceland. You can buy her all the rings you want." "I don't want her," Desmond erupted, his voice raw with a sudden, violent desperation. He took 2 steps forward, his boots splashing in the puddles, and before I could move, he fell to his knees in the wet asphalt, grabbing the hem of my coat. "I don't want her, Ramona," he sobbed, pressing his forehead against my knee. "I was stupid. I was so stupid. After you left, she moved into the apartment. She brought her things, she changed the couch, and I hated it. I hated every single second of it. It wasn't home. It wasn't you. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. I realized I don't love her. It was just a shadow. You were my home, Ramona.
Please.
Come back with me. We can get married tomorrow. We can go to Southgate. We don't have to keep a room for her." I blocked her. I cut her out of my life completely. I swear to God, I'll never speak to her again. I looked down at the man kneeling in the rain. 3 months ago, this sight would have broken me. I would have dropped to my knees beside him, weeping, forgiving him, wrapped in the familiar warmth of his embrace. But now, as I looked at him, I felt nothing but a profound, hollow pity. The love I had carried for him for 8 years hadn't died in a sudden flash of anger. It had died slowly, day by day, year by year, in the silent corners of our apartment, in the stood-up dinners, in the empty promises. It had died the moment I folded my 5th finger down and realized that the only person I was losing was the version of myself that loved him. "Stand up, Desmond," I said softly. He looked up, hope flickering in his bloodshot eyes. "Ramona? Stand up. You're embarrassing yourself." He slowly rose to his feet, his limbs stiff, his chest heaving with silent sobs. "I'm not coming back," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "Not tomorrow. Not ever. The Ramona who waited 8 years for you died in that apartment. The woman standing in front of you now is a doctor, a daughter, and someone who finally knows what she is worth." "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Just give me one chance. Just one." "I gave you 8 years worth of chances, Desmond," I said. "You used every single one of them to build a life with someone else. Go live it." I adjusted my grip on my umbrella, stepped around him, and walked toward my car. "Ramona," he screamed behind me, his voice raw and breaking. "Ramona, please. Don't do this to me. I love you. I've always loved you." I didn't turn back. I unlocked my car, stepped inside, and closed the door, shutting out the sound of his voice, the sound of the rain, and the remnants of a life that was never truly mine. Chapter 4. The Sound of Silence. Desmond's descent was quiet, but absolute. After that rainy afternoon at the hospital, he didn't return to the city immediately. He stayed in a cheap motel on the outskirts of my hometown, drinking himself to sleep, waiting outside my apartment building, and leaving letters in my mailbox that I threw directly into the recycling bin without opening. He tried to enlist his mother to call mine, but my mother, usually a gentle and polite woman, took the call and said only one sentence before hanging up. "Your son spent 8 years wasting my daughter's youth. Tell him to have the decency to let her live the rest of it." By the time the lease on the Southgate apartment expired in the winter, Desmond had lost his job at the architectural firm. His chronic absenteeism, fueled by his obsession with finding me and his spiraling drinking habits, had finally pushed his partners past their limit. Beverly, too, found herself cast out of the paradise she had tried so hard to build. Without Desmond's financial support, the rent he secretly paid, the job he had pulled strings to get her, the medical bills he had covered for her mother, her fragile world collapsed. She tried to reach out to him, to play the victim once more, but Desmond, consumed by resentment, blamed her entirely for my departure. In a bitter, final confrontation in the empty Southgate apartment, Desmond had thrown the plain gold pinky ring at her feet. "You took everything from me," he had spat, his eyes wild and hollow. "She left because of you. I lost the only woman who ever truly loved me because I was too busy pitying you." Beverly had stared at the ring on the floor, her eyes red, but this time, the tears didn't work. The fragile, helpless act had lost its audience. "You didn't pity me, Desmond," she had said, her voice dropping its soft, breathless quality, revealing a hard, bitter edge. "You loved the way I looked at you. You loved playing the savior because Ramona was too strong to make you feel like a man. Don't blame me for your own cowardice. You stayed with her because you wanted her stability, and you played with me because you wanted a fantasy. In the end, you were just a coward who couldn't choose, and now you have nothing." She had left the apartment, leaving the ring on the dusty floorboards. Chapter 5. The First Snow. Winter came early to my hometown that year. On a Friday evening in December, the first snow began to fall. It didn't come in a violent storm, but in soft, fat flakes that drifted lazily through the twilight, blanketing the streets in a quiet, pristine white. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the doctor's lounge at the hospital, holding a warm mug of hot chocolate. In the courtyard below, the streetlights were turning on, casting a warm, golden glow over the fresh snow. A young father was walking by, carrying his little girl on his shoulders, both of them laughing as they tried to catch the snowflakes on their tongues. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a message from the ward nurse. Instead, it was a photo from my father. It was a picture of our living room. The fireplace was crackling, a large green wreath was hanging on the mantel, and on the coffee table sat 3 mugs of steaming cider. "Your mother made your favorite apple turnovers," the text read. "Don't stay too late at the hospital, Ramona. The roads are getting slippery. Come home safe." I smiled, a deep, genuine warmth blooming in my chest. "I'm coming home," I murmured to myself, using the exact words I had said to my mother on the phone 3 months ago. But this time, they didn't carry the weight of tears or the sting of defeat. They carried the sweet, solid weight of anticipation. I turned away from the window, set my mug down, and walked back to the locker room to change out of my scrubs. As I walked out of the hospital gates, the cold air hit my face, crisp and clean. I raised my head, letting the cool flakes fall against my cheeks, my eyes closed. For years, I had thought that love was about endurance. I had thought it was about holding on, through the neglect, the silence, and the broken promises, believing that the length of the struggle measured the depth of the devotion. But standing in the quiet, falling snow, I finally understood. Love wasn't a prison sentence. It wasn't about waiting for someone to finally see you, or shrinking yourself so they wouldn't feel crowded. Sometimes, the greatest act of love you can perform is to open your hand, let the fingers uncurl, and walk away into the quiet, beautiful light of your own life. I opened my eyes, smiled into the winter night, and took my first step forward.